she also challenges her niece to think, well, what is it you're doing now that will embarrass your descendants? You know, and think, oh, you know, I think about that myself sometimes. Like, what is it that we think is normal, or that's just the way it is, or that's just how it should be, that in 50 years, 60 years, people will think, oh my gosh, I can't believe they thought that, or, oh, that's just grandma, you know. So I try to be aware of that, and I love how historical fiction has taught me that.
I'm here with Laura Moriarty tonight, and can you tell us why you're here at the Hutch Library?
I am here. I got invited to come talk about my newest novel, The Chaperone, and which is set in 1922, and it follows the story of the real silent film star Louise Brooks, who, of course, grew up in Wichita, and then moved to New York City in 1922 at the age of 15. And she really did go to New York with a 36-year-old Wichita housewife. And so I wrote it from the chaperone's point of view because, of course, Louise Brooks was wild. And I thought it would be really interesting to write the story from the perspective of someone trying to rein her in, but it ends up being a very pivotal summer for the chaperone. And it was so nice to come out here and get such a great response from Hutchinson. It was wonderful.
Oh, well, great. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit, you shared with us this evening some information about something that might be happening with the book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it looks like it might be made into a movie. The audiobook was read by Elizabeth McGovern, who of course plays Lady Cora on Downton Abbey and has just been a wonderful actor for years and years. I've always liked her. So she read the audiobook, and I was thrilled enough about that. And then I learned that she optioned it because she was going to play Cora. And so that means she reserves the right to have somebody write a screenplay. And then she talked to Julian Fellows, and Julian Fellows, who writes Downton Abbey and is a wonderful novelist and screenwriter, he wrote the screenplay, and they have sold it to a distribution. I think it was Fox. I'm a little confused of how Hollywood works, and but it looks like they're moving ahead with it, so I'm hopeful that it'll work out because I think they're so immensely talented. And as I was telling the group here, I just think it would be so exciting to sit in a movie theater and watch people act out my words on a big screen. Would just be a wonderful
exciting.
Yeah, it would
really
be really exciting. So I hope it happens, and I just adore both of them. So maybe.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
And can you tell us, are you writing anything
I am.
right
I'm
now?
working on another historical fiction book, and it's set in 1910. And so I'm working on it right now. It's always hard to think about how to frame them and describe them as I'm working on them, you know, and my head's kind of deep in it, so I don't know if I can even stand back. But it's, yeah, it's 1910, and it's Missouri this time, so I hope I'll be okay. But it's still pretty close to home.
Kind of taking it out of Kansas.
Taking it just a little bit, about 30 minutes out,
bit.
yeah. So it'll still ring true.
And you also mentioned that you had written 3 other books before this that were more contemporary. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
My first novel is The Center of Everything, and that is set in the 80s, and it is a girl growing up in Kansas with her single mom in the Reagan era. And so I invented this town called Kerrville, Kansas. But you know, it's kind of close to Wichita. It's kind of like maybe around here. It's this town that's small, and a little bit isolated, but not completely isolated. And it has, you know, these cast of characters, and yeah, it's a coming of age novel that's set in the 80s, and that's actually the KU Common book right now. So that's kind of fun. And then the second book is The Rest of Her Life, which is set in a town. I made up a name for it, but it's actually Hayes, you know?
Oh.
Yeah. So, and then the third book is While I'm Falling, which is set in Lawrence. And so my books are very much, you know, Kansas Midwestern stories that I like to write about, either contemporary or historical, because I love the region, you know, and I like to write about it. I actually didn't grow up here. I came here when I was 17, and I just absolutely fell in love with the landscape and the people. And so that's where you know, my heart is when I write.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for doing it. I appreciate it.
And you know, you might do it, but what I learned pretty quickly through my reading about that time period is that, you know, it was not a vacation destination at all, you know, and that our country was much more fragmented back then because we didn't have, you know, of course, the internet or even TV or even radio. You know, radio, the first radio station was just coming around in 1922, and it was still doing, you know, farm reports and weather. And so there wasn't any kind of overarching culture.